What's up everyone, my name is Robin. Thank you so much for tuning in again to this short video. I hope short, I hope I'm not talking too much. Anyway, like and subscribe please, because it means a lot to me. And yeah, just like talking and structuring my thoughts and putting it into video form. So I hope you get something out of it as well. Today I want to talk about our basic human nature, why we need a meaning in our lives, why and how we seek it, and the ways we ascribe meaning to certain things that may be a little unnecessary. And yeah, then also psychological biases and the current events taking place in our world, the political spectrum, and how these people ascribe meaning to certain stuff. I'm gonna be a little critical here, and yeah, I still hope you enjoy and get something out of it. So let's dive right into it. So I think the social pressure of youth and the professional pressure we later experience in adulthood squeeze the passion out of us. We are taught that the only reason to do something is to get some kind of reward. And this transactional nature of the world inevitably crushes us and makes us feel lost or stuck. Everything comes with sacrifice. Everything comes with some cost. And nothing is always pleasing or uplifting. So the question is, what struggle or sacrifice are we willing to endure for the greater good? Ultimately, it depends on our ability to hold on to something we care about and handle even the tough times and get through the inevitable bad days. And that's done by embracing uncertainty and embarrassment and feeling stupid sometimes, because that's part of the journey to achieving this meaningful thing. And we are losing meaning in such an extent that we're not willing to endure this anymore. If we get obstacles in our lives, we usually push them aside instead of like confronting them. And if we do that more and more often, more frequently, it just adds up until we can't bear it anymore, and then it falls down on us. What most people don't really understand is that passion is the result of action, not the cause of it. None of us know exactly how we feel about an activity until we actually do it. And there are overall three components that make it difficult. It's the mind, the body, and the discipline to control both. It has spiritual roots. If we, for example, take an ice bath and every cell in your body screams with pain, get me out of this, I don't want it anymore. And then it's the discipline of combining it, knowing why you do it, what's the purpose of it, and then staying in it. Because your mind tells you it's good, but your body screams in anguish that it just wants to get out. Evolutionarily, we are in survival mode, basically all the time. We try to separate like the world into pleasant, unpleasant, friend or foe. And if we don't experience adventure anymore and challenges, we become sluggish and lethargic and depressed. And then we indulge more and more into bad practices and pleasures like porn and junk food and just laying on the couch all day. And it's completely counterproductive to our nature, what actually fulfills us, what gives us meaning. We often have to question whether we are actively choosing to do things or just acting out of routine. Because when everything runs subconsciously and automatically, we are no longer in control of our actions. And unfortunately, most people define their lives merely as a chemical dependency in coping with their dull, existence. Sorry to front you, but that's the same with me and other people, We indulge in hedonistic behavior to escape. What are you doing if you play a video game? It may be fun, but you're like diving into a new world, taking on a character and forming this world to your desires, because it's difficult to do that in our world. There are more components to it, of course, more factors play into it, but at the end of the day, we numb our pain in some way, you know? And these people, or we all, justify our lives this way and want to shame others if they don't do the same. You know, I stopped drinking alcohol, for example, and every time I go out, people are like, "What? Are you sick? What are you doing?" You know, it's like, well, no, I just don't really see the sense in it, and I'm like outgoing by nature if I want to, so it doesn't add anything to it, you know. And yeah, well, some people react otherwise and they get like cynical, and cynicism is a defense mechanism for things that are strenuous or risky. We try to protect our ego, and the best way to do that is to reject what could reject us. And all those people who are optimistic about the future, they are just like living in delusions, you know. It's basically an excuse to continue living comfortably and not experience the pain of rejection. And if you project that cynicism or that anger on someone else, you're projecting yourself. It's not the person, it's something you're struggling with and you're bringing it outward. Unfortunately, laying it on another person, and that person has to bear the burden. Well, your relationship does at the end of the day, but still. And all that we reject, where we are cynic about, it includes everything that seems like difficult, you know, like relationships, communication with people who are like the opposite of your spectrum, you know, or your opinion landscape, diet, fitness, creativity, work. Additionally, it's easier for a group to find something they hate than something they love. And so you dive into these sort of meaningful or like hidden, you find hidden meaning in these groups that you ascribe importance to, and you get cynical of everything that is outside of the group and then tries to attack it. In The Denial of Death, it's a Pulitzer Prize winning work by Ernest Becker, and Ernest Becker develops this concept, what he calls immortality project or causa sui project. And Becker claims that people create, assign, and pursue these projects to feel connected to something that transcends their own finitude. In other words, these projects create a sense of meaning in the individual's life that can resonate long after death. And participation in such projects create a sense of meaning and purpose in an otherwise indifferent world. The current decline of religion mixed with the maxism of postmodernism to view everything with a very critical eye, to advocate individualism and self-realization, this all leads to a loss of like a clear value system, and we increasingly fall into chaos. Don't get me wrong, I'm liberal as well. I am probably anti-establishment, but I still see sense in order and structure, you know, because we need institutions we can trust that have some sort of legislative and executive, you know, and judicative that we can rely on, you know, because otherwise it's just anarchy in some way, you know, and anarchy has also its benefits, you know, nothing is black and white, I will come to that later, but still, we need institutions to organize a world, a livable world around, you know, and culture is nothing else than simply channeling our instincts to produce something good and beneficial for the greater good. So everything is always divided in this postmodernism into good and bad, oppressors, oppressed, without ever questioning one's position and engaging with the other side. It's never as clear, you know, as black and white as one might assume, but we humans tend to generalize, like to avoid uncertainty basically, and to have apparent comfort and clarity. And this will sooner or later lead to huge problems, because if you don't start fighting early and confronting it early, it just accumulates, as I mentioned earlier. And we can see that pretty clearly in the current protests regarding the Palestine-Israel situation. Because in the West, at a pro-Palestine demonstration, you will never see a European or American flag, because it starts with Israel, but it also extends through the hatred of the Western countries. If you look at the far right and the far left, you quickly see what they believe in and what are the problems they try to generalize. And this causes both fronts to categorize each other in return. Racists and woke brainwashed people, basically. In right-wing movements, it quickly becomes like clear and self-evident what is wrong, you know. In the far left, it's more subtle, but no less still destructive. And I think a liberal is someone who opposes every war except the current one and supports every civil rights movement except the one that is currently taking place. And liberals often hold idealistic views but act inconsistently in practice, especially regarding current events and challenges. The thing is that we're losing touch with reality. And since we are always in this bubble, in this like-minded group, we fail to confront our own ideas. And classical liberalism without a set of values ultimately dissolves into moral relativism. If you only care about freedom of speech, and freedom of speech is the highest value, you are essentially saying that all values are equal, and that the only thing that matters is the ability to express those values. So you have no systemic immunity against people who want to destroy the system from within. These people might say, I hate freedom of speech, and it's my perspective that this law should rule here. And this opposes a value-based freedom that suggests, yes, freedom of speech exists and is important, but it also exists within a larger sphere where there is like a greater truth and value system. And if you rebel against that system, to the extent that you destroy both freedom of speech and the values, then you stand outside and must leave, basically. It's the same with the institutions. Someone has to give clear directions, you know, because otherwise we put meaning on random stuff. And since we are flawed as human beings, same with the people in the institutions and the politicians, of course, but they at least are elected by some, well, democracy is also flawed, but they control themselves and the opposites, you know. Like, we have to have left and right, because if we're leaning too far in one direction, then it's not going to work, you know, because it's not a good mirror of what the people portray or think, you know, and what we need. We need to always reflect on everything. And the progressive leftists of Muslim countries, well, they are precisely the people who stand up against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. And in the West, Hamas is supported sometimes. And nowadays, it is well known that even amongst the terrorists, especially amongst the terrorists, that social movements quickly form in Western countries, and all leftists end any argument with a few keywords like racism or oppressor. And these liberals are drunk on virtue signaling and thus become useful idiots for people like Hamas, which is, to just remind you again, a terror organization who killed lots of people, tortured them, cut their Achilles, what's it called in English, you know, the thing where you can't walk anymore, so they can run. They burn people alive. Like, it's a completely set of value systems once again that they are following, and that's not, it cannot be aligned with Western values we usually follow and portray. And since everyone knows America and the West has made so many mistakes, you now certainly have to look good and always cave in. It's the same with Germany after the Second World War. Just imagine they would start like putting up military again. What kind of image would that portray to the outer world, you know? But the thing we can't forget here is that the West has given the people so much freedom to even be able to express themselves. That is not necessarily given around the world. 15 countries in the Middle East, including Gaza, have laws that require women to obey their husbands. And these societies also have guardianship laws, which means a woman needs her husband's permission to work, travel, leave the house, go to school, get medical help. Honor killings, where women are punished by their own fathers or brothers, occur so frequently that you can't even count how many there are. In 59 countries, there are no laws against sexual harassment in the workplace, and many have no laws against domestic violence or martial rape. 30 countries practice female genital mutilation, and 650 million women alive today were married as children. And where is the outcry and the campus protests for this? Instead, Islamists are supported. And there is a genocidal terrorist organization that openly calls for the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jews. And there's only one Jewish democratic country that not only can but must defend itself, because these people had nowhere to go all their lives. I've looked into Jewish history and they were always a marginalized group. And just because it looks so horrendous now that Israel is doing everything in their might to kill all Palestinians, we have to see the whole picture again, because it's not that obvious, and this terrorist group is merely a proxy for a genocidal terrorist regime that does the same to the Iranian people in their country. And on the 2nd of November, the Iranians were made the chair of the social mission of the UN Human Rights Council. That's an Orwellian reality that we cannot even comprehend at this point. So we have to be aware that anti-Semitism has been able to mutate over millennia by adapting to the social construct of the respective time, religion and science, and the secular religion of our time. It is human rights that have been appropriated and weaponized to enable this mutation of anti-Semitism, which has become mainstream on progressive campuses. It is not progress, it is regression, because October 7th showed that this is not progress, clearly. So anyone who supports October 7th or does not clearly condemn October 7th does so because universities have abandoned their mission to teach people what to think instead of how to think. And since we naturally seek these causa sui projects I talk about, it's easy for us to find belonging in this seemingly virtuous movement, especially if you see children dying on TikTok. Of course, it's horrendous. I'm not denying any of that. But you have to have a solid understanding of why these children are dying in the first place. Because the fault and the blame is not completely on Israel. Okay? The Hamas, they follow a regimen and a value system which allows them to use their own people as, well, just necessary casualties along the way to destroy the Jews. And they don't give a shit. If someone steals in Gaza food supplies, they will be stoned to death. It's a moral equivalency we can't quite grasp, in the West, because we are not used to this type of thinking. And blindly following and supporting that doesn't help, Since we naturally seek these projects, it's easy to sort of form an identity that goes along well with it. And just imagine, if you describe yourself as woke or feminist, you immediately find attachment in a group that does not question, just accepts, is huge and powerful, and supports you no matter what you say or do. Of course it's attractive to join that. We have to just accept that as a consequence of establishing our own values and identities, we can be confronted, you know, we still have to be confronted, because it's not something virtuous to be offended by being attacked for your identity, you know. There's nothing good in that, in your capacity to be offended, you know. And we live in a society and the culture that has the right to reject this, especially if you feel pressured by it. And then the solution is not to scream and shout and label, but to find common ground, actually. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. You will 100% not like align with all of my views here, but still, I would like to, of course, read your comments. If you liked what I said, don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and thank you for watching, and see you next time.